Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the show where we share ways to upgrade your lead generation. We have just come off of a mega series where we looked at marketing books that have been published in the last 2 years and spoke with the authors. I'd encourage you to go and check out. It's under the category Summer Marketing Books, and you can catch it on our website, or episodes 46 through episode 56. This is a solocast, and we're going to dive into what the world's largest technology companies have done to marketing and how you can level the playing field with them. But first, I want to remind you, I really like it when you talk to me about what you have heard in an episode that you liked or didn't like. And I want to get your feedback in any way that you're comfortable. You can tweet me at Funnel Reboot. You can leave a comment. You can catch me on Instagram. You can also leave listener feedback at 613-703-7073 or fill out the form on our website. So to get to today's show, we're going to talk about how there's a handful of platforms that are running the internet, and I'm going to try and help you deal with them because I believe in my heart of hearts that it's still possible for marketers to acquire customers in a way that pays off. But from the issues that I've seen through our agency clients and our own marketing, it takes a game plan to deal with this. And today, I'm going to try and give you that plan. I got to start though with some bad news. It is now a pay-to-play world, thanks to the economic principle of scarcity. This scarcity has been created by the main players in this game: Google, Amazon, Facebook. Microsoft's got a seat at the table with LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok, and a few other mobile-only players round out the field. They did this by creating walled gardens. Well, in the case of the biggest, they may as well be continents. And they stand between you and the buyers you're trying to get in front of. And they've put up paywalls with a pay-per-click advertising model. But here's the good news. By understanding what the platforms did to achieve their pay-to-play dominance, you can get around this roadblock. It isn't insurmountable. So we're going to recognize first that they've done this through progressing in how they do analytics. They've realized that marketing is now computationally beyond the scale that humans can handle. They decided to handle it by getting together some of the largest data sets on the planet. How much data? To paraphrase George Harrison of Beatles fame, it's going to take data. A whole lot of data. In a paper that was published by Randall Lewis of Google and Justin Rao of Microsoft, where they were examining the size of the data set, they said, quote, "A calibrated statistical argument shows that the required sample size for an experiment to generate informative confidence intervals is typically in excess of 10 million person weeks." Not everybody's got the ability to hold on that kind of data. And by doing this, these platforms have become better at predicting than all of us. What is predicting worth? Well, here are a few examples. See, if you could, as a marketer, predict what's going to happen in the next few minutes, you wouldn't send a single bounced email or send one that has a typo or a bad link in it. If you could predict an hour ahead, you wouldn't use pay-per-click the same way at all, as you'd know who bounced off your site versus who stayed around. Predict a day ahead, there'd be a lot less webinar events or virtual calls with poor attendance. A few weeks ahead, well, sales would know whether a lead is qualified even before they began working on it. A few months ahead, I think at that point marketers are changing who they're targeting ads at and what messages that they put in front of them. And if we go out to a year, sales and marketing wouldn't miss annual targets because they would know which initiatives are going to result in meeting goals. Predictions are quite key to get learning and to decide what you're going to do next based on that. A prediction of how long it takes to reach your work is used to determine when you leave home in the morning. A prediction of how far the gas in your tank will get you is used to decide when you're going to stop for gas. A prediction of your emotional response to a movie, that goes into the choice of movies you watch. A prediction of value for money, that applies to just about every product you buy. How does predictive analytics improve on what's around right now with analytics? Most of us are just using descriptive analytics. That's what tells us what is going on. And that's just usually focusing on a single prospect touch point. What's different for these Silicon Valley players is that their predictive analytics all happens inside of a machine. And the machine usually does something with the insight that it finds. It may take an action, or at the very least, recommend that a human take an action. The thing about these predictions, because they have so much data, is that they can be made at an individual level. Let's go hear from a recent talk with Raj Venkatesan from the Darden School of Business.
Right? And if you want to personalize your brand, ironically, you need machines to manage that scale. That is, to actually get a human connection with a consumer or with a business client, the scale is not humanly possible to manage, and the speed is not humanly possible to manage.
It's great that personalized marketing is now possible, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Marketing at the individual visitor level means we have to stop using averages to evaluate effectiveness. Let's hear from our recent guest, Patrick Gilbert, on this.
Marketers were using averages to make decisions because that was the best that we had. We didn't have anything better. So we would look at things like average order value and average conversion rate and average time on site and average keyword volume. Okay, great. So then Google comes along and they have more data where they can actually look at the micro level of an individual. And this by itself is just, we do not give Google enough credit, or Facebook or some of these other platforms that have been able to do this as well. We don't give them enough credit for how incredible this really is, that for the first time in the history, advertising has been around for almost 200 years. For the first time ever, we can look at an individual message to an actual consumer and change the way that we go about not just the messaging, but what we're willing to pay for that individual message.
The ad platforms just keep getting better at this personalization. The major marketing platforms like Google Ads have shown that data and AI builds a virtuous cycle. What I mean by that is the more data that's gathered, the smarter the AI gets, and the higher the value that users get out of it, which brings in more data because they're using the tool more, and around it goes. And this builds a moat that's nearly impossible for other companies to come along and unseat them. All right, so it's clear that the big guys have won with AI and data. Are they the only ones who can play this? How tall do I need to be to ride on this ride? Well, I think there's some important mind shifts that must happen. And the first one, we're going to hear from Jim Kane back in episode 41.
You're increasingly seeing companies that are millions, not billions of dollars a year, realize the strategic importance of their digital data and reporting and starting to move it into this being accurate and governed and usable. I was going to say democratically usable, but I was overdoing it. Is something that is a strategic initiative for this business. When you're there, it is time to bring in a contractor or a consultant, because the second you decide to take something like Google Analytics seriously, that's not fair, but like really kind of bring it into decision making, then all of a sudden you go, oh crap, well we use Salesforce and Pardot and Salesforce's email cloud. We actually need that data directly connected with Google Analytics to both help us make better decisions about who our customers are and when customers will do things, but also to create audiences for who our next customer could be. How do I connect those things together? Right? Like you immediately start realizing it's more like an onion, and you will cry.
We'll come back to Jim's point about multiple data sources, but he's right that how we use data has everything to do with the value that we place on the data. If we let accounting people set its value, well, they'll tell us that it's costly to retain data, that we would be better off discarding it. And yet, it costs almost nothing to create and store data in its raw form now. And if it's refined and used to generate something other than data like intelligence, its worth is potentially staggering. Competitively speaking, the team that has the best data wins. Unfortunately, this same low appraisal value has been tacked on to how we think of improving our ability to make predictions with data. To prove this, let's hear from the team that built a prediction engine that guessed the most right answers in the game show Jeopardy's history. Let's take it from IBM's Marcus Hearn, who said, "Predictive analytics is extremely powerful because if you can start determining what factors are predictive of an outcome, then you can start toying with those factors to optimize that outcome and avoid negative outcomes." Stunningly, when we look at our own companies, it becomes very hard to find marketing initiatives that attempt this. I think we let ourselves off the hook for tracking and predicting. It shouldn't be this way, because the math checks out. So if we're going to do this, we have to move away from some old ways that we've been doing our jobs. We have to face up to some hard truths. The first hard truth is we don't own a lot of our data. Chuck Heeman and Ken Burberry in the book Digital Marketing Analytics said, if you think about all the tools we have talked about, you see that there is one common denominator. You don't own any of the data. Herein lies what we think is the biggest revolution coming to digital analytics. Companies will be building internal repositories of this data. Let's break down what classes of data they're talking about. Let's start with third-party data. You see, some of it has already gone away. People who are using Apple devices, that portion of our visitor audience since 2021 has gone away. And Google is in the process of taking it away from other visitors on Android or that use Chrome. The first impact of this is it lessens everyone's ability to target these audiences with display ads. It leads to a second impact, that to measure any audience targeting, we marketers will have to adjust the conversion rates that we're seeing, because we're not seeing the whole population that saw the ads. You're only seeing a sample of them. As not all of these conversions can be attributed to an individual ad, we'll have to prorate them to an approximation of what we think actually happened. Let's turn to second-party data. Let's hear from our podcast guest from episode 52, David Rodnitsky.
Now, the other thing about Google, you mentioned Google. Google, Facebook, Apple, these are second-party sources. So they're not sort of buying the data from someone else. They're collecting the data and then they're letting you use it. But as we know, all of these publishers or platforms, I should say, are considering removing the ability to use third-party data in your advertising and to limit the second-party data that they provide themselves. So if you are dependent right now on second-party and third-party data to make smart decisions about your marketing campaigns, in the next, say, 18 to 24 months, a lot of that data will go away. So it's a good time to start collecting that data, first-party data today, so that you're ready for a future where your data sources are going to be more limited.
David correctly points out that before data comes to our website, it's second-party. We can download this data that we purchased. and we can merge it with first-party data, such as the visitors on our own website. And thankfully, Google Analytics 4 captures this first-party data at a very granular level for all kinds of things that happen on our site. It collects and reports data not only on which pages each user reads, but how far down the page they read, whether they watch some or all of a video, whether they started to fill out a form, and what marketing channel brought them here so all this could happen. If you set up a Google BigQuery account, they make this data available to you for free. Once you bring the web analytics data in-house, you should tie it to marketing automation and CRM data that tells what happened after they completed some action on your site. That layers each prospect's browsing behavior onto what sales interactions they ended up having and if and when they bought from you. Then you'll pull that second-party data from each of the PPC ad platforms. That will inform you in actual dollars what it costs to use multiple channels to touch prospects at multiple moments in their buying journey, and how effectively all this is working together. And you end up with a single system in-house, one massive asset that you can exploit. Let's hear Professor Venkatesan on his description of it.
That you are looking at an individual customer, Jill, and everything that is the brand has interacted with Jill about, right? So Jill is the center and everything data that is focused around Jill, right? And then that's a difference from traditional data sets that are more siloed and functional, which are important for operations. But the big task is how do you move all of that into a customer-focused data? Now, when you do that, the next part of your question was interesting is where do you apply it? And this is a really, really important point. We talk about in the experimentation phase that you need to experiment, let 1,000 flowers bloom. But even there, you need some direction in terms of what are the places where you want to start. And what we talked to a lot of leaders in marketing, and one of them talked about this concept of value pocket. And what it really means is that the way they think about analytics, data, AI, is that what are some spaces in my customer journey where a data-driven insight will increase value for my consumers. And that's where we begin.
So once we've rectified being able to own the data that we currently were just peering into, there's a second truth that we have to come to grips with. You have to stop making decisions without data. A recent study by Adobe found that 49% of marketers say, quote, "I trust my gut to guide my decisions on where to invest my marketing budget," unquote. As data and analytics continue to become better and more available, these 49% of marketers may find it increasingly difficult to get their budget decisions approved on gut feel alone. And now that we have nearly limitless computational power, we've no reason to hold ourselves back from making decisions based on data. We can't say, well, the answer to X is just too hard to calculate. We can't use data to make that decision. Well, the reality in the 2020s is, yes, we can crunch that data and get that answer. All right, what are we going to do that's new here to build up our proficiency here? This isn't a small investment. It's enough that you have to sell it internally within your company. Let's hear from Christopher Penn in episode 48 on what this takes.
So to do AI well, you need three things, right? Well, four things. You need engineering capability, right? You need computational power, being able to do things. You need the ability to take the products of AI software to market, which is really important because it's like making a bunch of binders that nobody reads if you don't do that. And you need the business case for it. So in those arenas, you have a lot of very, very expensive things. A good AI engineer, salary wise, is at least six figures. Sometimes, depending on their skill and their capabilities, maybe mid six figures. Like some of the folks who are the best of the best in Silicon Valley and stuff are commanding $500,000 a year, right? Because they know what the heck they're doing. That's not a small investment. The work that your company needs to do to re-engineer its data for usage with AI is not small. It's not insignificant, depending on the application.
There's a flywheel effect, though, as we tie different data sources together. Let's go back to here. David Rodnitsky described this.
A lot of times with online marketing, people look at their data from Google and Facebook, from their ad campaigns. They might look at web analytics, and then they kind of stop there. But the truth is, there are a multitude of sources that if you can aggregate them, are going to give you a huge advantage. You can look at your call center information. You can look at your marketing automation. You can look at your CRM. You can look at your point of sale. You can look at your ERP. I'm forgetting some, but I go down the list of all the different sources you can look at. And if you can imagine, if you start putting these things together, every time you're able to find one of these sources and connect one of these sources and then put them into some sort of dashboard in a normalized sense where you can be actionable. That example I gave about the blue widgets becomes stronger and stronger because you just become more and more granular, and you're suddenly able to sort of see things that your competition just can't see.
And to be sure, there are third-party tools that can help us along the way. But as we build an internal data science competency, Professor Venkatesan points out we may need to build this in-house for the sake of doing our own email or advertising that's most effective for us.
I think most off-the-shelf software for AI work to a certain extent because they're general purpose and they're meant for, and you're trying it out, and so like an email marketing campaign, there are some options that you will do, and then based on that, you can automate the subject line or heading and such. But then if you want to take that and connect it into the customer's loyalty program or the customer's, click through, after they click through, when they go to the website, what did they do on the website? What did they link, browse on that, and connect that into a report that goes into the salesperson. And then when the salesperson calls the customer, the reaction and the objections from the customer and all, and that connects back. So you start quickly seeing, right? Like you see, off the shelf doesn't work anymore. You need to start customizing, and you need to make it work within your current systems.
Now, does this mean we need to become computer programmers, to dive into computer languages, if, then, else instructions? No. Now, with machine learning, we can just feed them examples, much as we do when we want to teach another person something. That's how smart computers are getting. They can learn like humans. They can now take this indirect information and infer the rules and instructions that they should be following. And this enables us to dump large amounts of data in and let the AI figure it out. Well, of course it's going to figure out the things that we could have used code to tell it, but it will quickly surpass that, and it will start seeing things that even we couldn't see. Machines like PPC advertising platforms can actually use this learning too. You can show them this same data and get their automation trained on how to use it to market more effectively. Let's hear from Patrick on how he's done this.
Ultimately, we got to a point now, it's like, okay, we need to train Google to go after our higher quality customers and sell them the types of products that are more likely to help expedite the learning process. Right? So this is now this is next level stuff. We're not tinkering with max CPC bids. We're thinking strategically about, we're being algorithmic engineers. We're thinking about how to guide and coach a computer to go figure out who our customers are and how it's going to make better decisions on our behalf. Automation will change your job, but it will not replace you. And in fact, the opportunity to provide value to your clients, or if you're like a marketing director client side, the opportunity to provide value to your larger organization is greater now thanks to automation than it has ever been before. And the reason for that is exactly what you just outlined. It gives us the opportunity to solve larger marketing problems, which I'll give you an example in a second. But I said earlier, traditionalist PPC advertising was not marketing. It was just like tinkering, and we thought we were using a data-driven approach, but we weren't. We were drones looking at cost per click and conversion and return on ad spend and making a plus or minus. That's not a data-driven approach. That's nothing. Anyone could do that. What we get to do now is real fun, challenging marketing.
In other words, with advanced data science, you can tell the right combination of acquisition channels that a quality prospect needs such and such at a certain touch point to become a lead. Knowing this, you can then feed that data into each one of the ad platforms and constraining them and training them on how they have to contribute to your overall acquisition strategy. This might seem like a ton of work, and it's not small, but it'll let us return to being real marketers. So if we're feeling that we don't need to be dialing knobs so much, and that those things can become peripheral to what we do, hear from people like Fred Valais, who was in episode 53 on the new areas of marketing that will become core to what we do.
It's surprising to me how much I've come around in terms of like just saying, yeah, Google automation is actually quite good, thanks to just the evolution of machine learning itself. And so I've become more of a fan of it. And then it's also like this whole, I think it's a big mindset change that we need to go through, which is stop worrying about the details that we traditionally have, like bids and keywords and ads, and start worrying more about how you report conversion value, how you choose attribution models, how you bring in your offline data for offline conversion tracking, how you bring your business insights. Like these are all things that we sort of manage at the periphery of the ad system. And then all the details within the ad system itself, that's what the machines are going to do, right? But if we need to inform it at the periphery of what do we really want? How do we really measure it? How does it really contribute to our business?
So to wrap up, I'm glad to say that you can now harness all your data, and it can help you tie advertising dollars to the customers you've acquired. This data can tell you actual ad spend amounts that led them to buy. And knowing this, you can model the optimal level of spend that you should have to acquire the optimal number of customers that you can get. And you can even net out a good marginal profit per customer target and hit it. The algorithms are taking all this training and they're using it to work with your acquisition funnel. So it becomes so predictable. Its cost could even be thought of as an advance that you're paying for getting a new customer. And that advancement gets repaid out of a small part of the profit margin that you make on your new customer. So in a way, your profits are replenishing your marketing costs. And now the marketing function can be thought of as a revenue generator, just like sales. That's what I mean by getting back to the fun stuff. So even if you don't see yourself getting elbow deep in data, remember that it will relieve you from worrying about falling under the budget axe, and it will liberate you to go do even better marketing. I hope you're going to start implementing some of this today, and if you hit any snags along the way, I hope you'll reach out to me or someone else who's immersed in this to get you unstuck.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.